Myvera of the Thessian Dominion had made peace with disappointment long ago. Her daughter, Princess Aliara, was brilliant, compassionate, and politically astute, everything an heir should be. But she was also visibly scarred from a childhood illness that Thessian medical technology had cured but couldn't cosmetically repair. In Thessian culture, where physical perfection was deeply intertwined with concepts of leadership worthiness, Aliara's scars had become disqualifying. Noble houses refused bonding proposals. Political allies suggested Myvera designate a different heir. Court advisors delicately recommended that Aliara focus on administrative duties rather than public representation. All because half her face carried the silvered marks of survival. Myvera had fought these attitudes for years, using her authority to insist that capability mattered more than appearance. But even queens couldn't change deeply embedded cultural values through decree alone. The latest rejection had come that morning, the seventh noble house to decline bonding consideration in as many months. "No one will ever choose my daughter," Myvera said quietly to her chief advisor in the privacy of the royal study. "Not for her brilliance, not for her compassion, not for her political acumen. They see the scars and decide she's somehow less worthy of consideration. Your Majesty, there are still houses that haven't been approached, who will also refuse, for the same unspoken reasons they all refuse." Myvera's frustration was palpable. "I've ruled for 30 years. I've negotiated treaties, managed crises, expanded our influence across 17 systems. And I can't protect my own daughter from prejudice masquerading as aesthetic preference." That afternoon, Myvera attended a diplomatic reception for the new human delegation, routine cultural exchange that required royal presence but little actual engagement. She didn't notice when Aliara slipped away to the palace gardens, didn't see the structural failure in the garden overlook that had been scheduled for repair, didn't witness the moment when ancient stone gave way and her daughter fell 3 stories toward the courtyard below. But she heard the screams, and arrived at the courtyard to find a human, one of the junior delegation members, holding Aliara in his arms, having somehow caught her mid-fall and absorbed the impact in ways that left him clearly injured but her miraculously unharmed. "Get medical teams now," Myvera commanded, rushing to her daughter's side. The human Marcus Webb, a cultural liaison officer, was carefully transferring Aliara to the arriving medical staff despite obvious pain from the impact. "She's okay," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Caught her before she hit the ground. She's okay." "You're injured," Myvera observed, seeing how Marcus favored his left side. "Doesn't matter, she's okay." Marcus repeated it like a mantra, like ensuring Aliara's safety was the only thing that mattered despite his own pain. Medical teams swarmed both of them. Aliara was shaken but physically unharmed. The human had taken the full impact of the catch. Marcus had 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and severe bruising. "Why?" Myvera asked Marcus as medical staff worked around them. "Why risk yourself for someone you don't know?" Marcus looked confused by the question. "She was falling. Someone had to catch her. I was there." "You could have been killed. The impact would have definitely killed her if nobody caught her," Marcus said simply. "I was there. I could help. That's all that mattered." Over the following days, as Marcus recovered from his injuries, Myvera found herself repeatedly drawn to conversations with the human who'd saved her daughter without hesitation. "You're being treated well," Myvera asked during one visit to the medical wing. "Very well, Your Majesty. Thessian medical technology is remarkable. You saved my daughter's life. I'm not certain well treated adequately expresses appropriate gratitude." "I did what anyone would do in that situation." "No," Myvera corrected. "You did what you would do. Many people would have frozen, would have called for help, would have prioritized their own safety. You moved toward danger to protect someone you'd never spoken to." Marcus was quiet. "Your Majesty, I've seen the princess at several diplomatic functions. She's always the one making sure everyone feels included, asking thoughtful questions, genuinely engaging rather than just performing courtesy. When I saw her falling, I didn't think about whether to help. I just knew someone worth saving was in danger. Someone worth saving, Myvera repeated. You determined that very quickly. It wasn't a determination, it was obvious. Though I'll admit, I don't understand why she's usually standing alone at these functions, when she's clearly the most engaged person in the room. The observation struck Myvera unexpectedly. You've noticed that. Hard not to notice. She asks better questions than most of the ambassadors, has genuine curiosity about human culture, but people seem to maintain distance from her. I assumed it was some protocol I didn't understand. It's not protocol, Myvera said quietly. It's prejudice. My daughter carries visible scars from a childhood illness. In Theshan culture, that's apparently disqualifying for many things. Marcus frowned. Disqualifying how? For political bonding, for being taken seriously as heir, for being seen as anything other than damaged rather than survived. Marcus stopped himself. I apologize, Your Majesty. It's not my place to critique Theshan cultural values. Please critique them. I'd welcome outside perspective on attitudes I find equally problematic. It's absurd, Marcus said bluntly. Your daughter survived something that kills most children. The scars are evidence of survival, of strength. Why would that make her less worthy of consideration rather than more worthy? Because Theshan aesthetic values are deeply tied to concepts of perfection and leadership worthiness. Then Theshan aesthetic values are wrong, Marcus said with certainty. Scars don't indicate weakness. They indicate surviving something difficult. That's valuable, especially in leadership. Myvera found herself genuinely curious. You don't find her scars disturbing. I find them interesting. They obviously tell a story about something she survived. Why would that be disturbing? Most Theshans find them off-putting. Evidence of imperfection that makes her unsuitable for various roles. Most Theshans are missing the point then, Marcus said. But that's their loss, not hers. As Marcus recovered, Aliara began visiting him, initially to thank him for saving her life, but the visits extended into genuine conversations about culture, aesthetics, survival, and the weight of expectations. I've spent my entire life being told my scars make me unsuitable, Aliara said during one visit. For bonding, for public representation, for being taken seriously as heir. You're the first person outside my mother who's looked at them, and not immediately categorized me as damaged. I don't see damaged, Marcus said honestly. I see someone who survived something difficult and carries the evidence of that survival. That's admirable, not disqualifying. Theshan culture disagrees with you. Theshan culture is wrong about this particular issue, Marcus replied. Though I recognize I'm an outsider making judgments about values I don't fully understand. No, you're an outsider offering perspective that challenges values that should be challenged. Aliara's expression was complicated. Do you know how many bonding proposals have been declined on my behalf? I'm guessing the number is significant. 7 noble houses in the past year alone, all with carefully diplomatic language that boils down to, the princess's scars make her unsuitable. Then those 7 noble houses are remarkably stupid, Marcus said. They're prioritizing aesthetic preferences over actual capability and character. Their loss. You keep saying that, their loss. But it feels like my loss when everyone keeps choosing not to choose me. It's their loss because they're missing the opportunity to bond with someone brilliant, compassionate, and genuinely engaged with making things better. You're not the one losing value in these rejections. They are. Aliara was quiet. You really believe that? I really believe that. Your scars don't make you less worthy. They make you someone who survived something most people don't survive. That's strength, not weakness. Over the following weeks, their friendship deepened into something both recognized as potentially more significant. I think I'm falling in love with you, Aliara admitted during one conversation. Which is complicated because you're human and I'm Theshan, and there are approximately 17 diplomatic and cultural barriers to that being viable. Also complicated because I'm definitely falling in love with you, Marcus replied. Despite all those same barriers. What do we do about this? Honestly, I have no idea, but I know that what I feel for you isn't going to disappear just because it's complicated. When Aliara informed her mother that she and Marcus had developed feelings for each other and were considering pursuing an actual relationship, Myvera's response surprised them both. He chose you, Myvera said quietly. Without calculation, without political consideration, without caring about aesthetic conventions that shouldn't matter. He saw you falling and moved to save you before thinking about cost or consequence. And then he looked at you afterward and saw capability and character rather than scars. You're not opposed to this? Aliara asked carefully. I'm opposed to the cultural values that made you believe no one would ever choose you for who you are, Myvera said. Marcus chose you. Not as political alliance, not as calculated advantage, not despite your scars, but genuinely not caring about them as factor in his assessment of your worth. It will create diplomatic complications, Aliara noted. The court will object. Let them argue, Myvera said with absolute authority. I've spent decades watching my daughter be rejected by people who should have been honored to be considered. A human cultural liaison saw you truly, valued you genuinely, and saved your life without hesitation. If the court objects to that, they're welcome to explain why political calculation should matter more than genuine connection. The announcement of Aliara and Marcus's intention to pursue formal bonding created exactly the controversy Myvera had anticipated. Noble houses objected. Court advisors claimed this set dangerous precedent. Traditionalists argued that bonding with a human undermined Thetan cultural values. Myvera addressed each objection with the same response. My daughter has been rejected 7 times by noble houses who claim to value political alliance, but actually valued aesthetic perfection over capability. A human saw her worth immediately, saved her life at risk to his own, and chose her for who she is rather than what political advantage she might represent. If Thetan culture cannot recognize the value in that, then Thetan culture needs to examine its priorities. The bonding ceremony, 6 months later, blended Thetan and human traditions in ways that symbolized the bridge Aliara and Marcus were building between their cultures. Standing at the ceremony, watching her daughter bond with a human who'd chosen her without hesitation, Myvera thought about her lament from months ago. No one will ever choose my daughter, she'd said. She'd been wrong. Someone had chosen Aliara, not for political advantage, not despite her scars, not through careful calculation of benefits. Marcus had chosen her because he'd seen her worth immediately and valued it genuinely. And in doing so, he challenged every assumption Thetan culture had made about perfection, worth, and who deserved to be chosen. Thank you, Myvera said to Marcus during a quiet moment at the reception, for seeing what everyone else was too blind to recognize. Your Majesty,